Now, so far in our coverage of the Howard League for Penal Reform's report on youth justice here on the Jersey Today programme, we've heard from the three politicians who together form the corporate parent. Well, this morning we'll now hear from the man at the top, our Chief Minister, Senator Frank Walker. Now, I spoke to Senator Walker earlier and first asked him for his general reaction to the findings and recommendations of the Howard League report.
Well, I welcome the report. I think it's constructive. It's positive generally, and it makes some very good recommendations, many of which, of course, really endorse the recommendations made by Andrew Williamson in his report, and most of which are already on the way to being implemented. So I welcome it, it's helpful, and it will improve our childcare services in the future.
Now, we know that the states intend to ratify the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child. Now, even though you'll no longer be in the states, do you expect that the report from the Howard League and all their recommendations will be the subject of a full-scale debate in the House?
Well, that, of course, sits with members of the House next year, and I don't know. At this moment in time, I can't really see why it should be, because they've come to 11 general conclusions overall, which are being represented by some as being very negative and very critical. Actually, if you read the 11 conclusions they've come to on page 30, generally speaking, they're positive. They give good commendations to the youth service, to the probation service.
But there are certain things that are real huge issues, though, Senator, like the age of criminality. You know, they're saying it should be 14.
Indeed.
Jersey's is 10.
Indeed.
Really, that does need a debate, doesn't it?
I think that specific topic will be the subject of much debate both outside and inside the states. Now, whether that's a recommendation that will find popular support, I don't know. It's a very far-sweeping, far-reaching recommendation, and so whether Jersey wants to go that far or not will be a matter for consultation, clearly, with everyone involved, and then ultimately for the states to decide.
Do you personally believe, Senator, that children should be kept out of the court system and that placing them in custody should be used absolutely as a last resort?
I think it should be used as a last resort, but at the same time we've got to recognise that there are some very difficult children in Jersey, just as there are in any society, where sadly for their own protection and the protection of others, sometimes incarcerating them is absolutely unavoidable. And again, I think that's something, how far we go in terms of removing children from the criminal system, how far we go, or how far the states of the future goes, will again have to be a matter for very deep consideration.
Something soon has to be done, because you're sending young ladies to Lemoyne. That's actually illegal under Jersey law.
Something has to be done, and of course that's already the subject of review and much discussion and consultation. There's no doubt that a number of the recommendations of the report need to be implemented, and as I've said already, many of them are already well on the way to being implemented. Some of them have some pretty significant consequences, and they need a lot of thought and a lot of care. But again, I repeat, I warmly welcome the recommendations the Howard League have put forward.
Now, I know some people have described the Howard League's recommendations as liberal. Do you think Jersey as a society is ready or able to fully embrace the report's recommendations?
I think ready to embrace many of the report's recommendations, yes, absolutely. Whether the island is ready to embrace all of them remains to be seen. We've talked about the reduction.
This is because we're a very conservative island, really, aren't we?
Well, we are, and we've talked about the increase, not the reduction, in the age of criminality. That in itself is a very big issue for discussion, and how the island will react to that and how states members will react to that remains to be seen.
But do you agree that Jersey is, strict punishment and control is part of the island's culture, isn't it?
Well, it has been. Now, to what extent that's still appropriate in a modern society is, if you like, central to the debate, and is going to require a huge amount of consultation and discussion and very careful decision-taking.
The report points to the legacy left at the Greenfield Centre by the things such as the Grand Prix system. We do understand that such practices no longer take place, but there is what the Howard League describe as highly credible evidence that abusive, perhaps even unlawful practices were carried out there. Now, how satisfied are you as Chief Minister, that allegations have been properly investigated?
Well, I am satisfied, but having said that, I'm certainly not against another independent review. You will recall, of course, that we've had the Andrew Williamson report. Mrs. June Thoburn now heads up the Child Protection Committee. We're in close contact with the NSPCC, and we've shown ourselves very evidently to be totally open to external review and reports. And if
what do you mean by external? Because given the circumstances, it was an internal report from an officer at Greenfields, in fact from within the same department. Was that adequate? Should there have been at that time an independent external investigation?
I believe it was adequate, and certainly...
but it wasn't external, Senator, was it?
It wasn't external, that's
well,
what I'm
why
saying.
wasn't it?
Because it was considered to be appropriate at the time. And
what do you consider now?
One doesn't always go out to external review. Jersey has shown itself to be very capable of reviewing its own services where appropriate. But we've called in Andrew Williamson, we've called in June Thoburn, we've had the Howard League, we work with the NSPCC. We could hardly be more open to external scrutiny.
Yes, but should there now be an independent external inquiry into what went on at Greenfields?
That's a matter for...
What do you think?
I personally don't think so.
Why not?
Because the Grand Prix system was never implemented as documented, and as the Howard League have themselves confirmed, is not operating. Now, what are we going actually therefore to review, and how will it help?
So if it doesn't happen anymore, it doesn't matter what happened in the past? Is that what you're saying? It doesn't matter what happened in the past?
Of course I'm not saying that, but it has already been reviewed. And
internally?
Had there been, let's recall, the Howard League have said that they did not review Greenfields in thorough detail. That was not part of their remit. We've already had the Williamson review. We work closely with Mrs. Thoburn, who's a leading UK expert, nothing previously to do with Jersey. We work closely with the NSPCC. I'm not quite sure how much further we can sensibly go in terms of external review. Having said that, I am not against, if it's considered necessary, I'm in no way opposed to another external review if that's what is clearly required and that's what's desirable.
And if that is desirable, could that be one of your last actions as Chief Minister?
I have my doubts about it, but I'm certainly not opposed to it.
Could that be one of your last actions as Chief Minister?
No, I don't, that's not appropriate for me to set up. That would be wrong. Within less than 2 weeks of my term of office expiring, that's a matter for the future Chief Minister, or more particularly those ministers who have responsible or will have responsibility for childcare.
Now, in our coverage of the Howard League's review and its ramifications, we at BBC Jersey have attempted to speak to a number of senior officers and state's employees, and the response we get is that we should talk to the ministers and elected politicians. Now, that begs me to ask the question, are Jersey's civil servants therefore immune from public scrutiny?
No, of course they're not, but ministers are responsible. And on the other hand, we hear criticisms from some that it is civil servants who establish policy. And this, I think, very clearly shows that it isn't the case. It is ministers who establish policy. It is ministers who are accountable to the electorate through you and other media in Jersey, and that's exactly as it should be.
So the policy of the states, or the Council of Ministers, is that officers and civil servants are forbidden to respond to the media, even on matters of great public interest which fall within their sphere of responsibility.
You are interviewing me. You've interviewed many other ministers. We are the people responsible. We are the people who should be held to account, and we're more than prepared to be so.
OK, are you happy then that our, and presumably other media, request to talk to those officers and managers directly involved with children within the Jersey penal system actually refer to your communications department? What it seems to us is that as though the state is protecting these people. Is that the case?
Absolutely not. And that's, how can one argue that when we've had so many external reviews and the whole childcare structures in Jersey have been scrutinised so thoroughly by Andrew Williamson, the Howard League, June Thoburn, etc., that argument just doesn't hold water.
So if, for whatever reason, officers and civil servants are absolved from public scrutiny and accountability, to whom are they answerable?
The ministers, absolutely to the